There's a rumour here that a young man from Syria has been detained in the immigration van, so they're trying to ask the officers if that's true.
I think there's a man in that side.
As we film, we learn that a man has been detained. He's not in the van, he's being held inside the centre. His name is Mohammed, and we managed to speak to him.
After that, they told us they will take us to Rwanda.
So they said they're going to take you to Rwanda?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You must be very frightened.
We are very scared now.
Mohammed told me he's originally from Syria, where he'd escaped the war. He says he's been living in shared accommodation in Nottingham and turned up this morning for what he thought would be a routine appointment. So when you came to sign, what happened?
They told me we want to give you some paper and take me inside.
Yeah.
After that, there's a policeman. After that, they took my phone and my everything.
Yeah.
And they put me in the room. Very scared.
Mohammed told me he isn't alone. He's being held with 3 others, 2 from Iran and 1 Afghanistan. He told me he'd come to the UK via a boat across the Channel and that he had received a letter from the Home Office telling him he's liable for removal. We couldn't confirm what had happened, as the Home Office told us it'd be inappropriate to comment on operational details.
Mustafa volunteers here 4 days a week, arrived from Morocco 2 years ago, travelled via Britain but didn't stay there because of the Rwanda policy.
Have you met lots of people that have come from Belfast?
Yeah, almost like 70 or 80% of all of them come from Belfast.
Oh, really? The people that you were,
Yeah.
people that you were working with here?
Yeah.
Okay.
This marries with contested comments made by the Irish Justice Minister last week that the majority of people coming claiming asylum are coming via Belfast, crossing the open border into Ireland, in part because of Rwanda.
Not including Ukrainians, around 15,000 people arrived in the Republic of Ireland last year to claim asylum. In the first 4 months of this year, it's at 6,000, so looks like an increase. Now, according to the Minister for Justice, 80% of that 6,000 arrived from Northern Ireland into the Republic. So, in other words, got on a bus in Belfast and arrived in Dublin at the main bus station here, Busaras.
Most people know to just get a bus from Belfast to Dublin, but according to Mustafa, those who don't are exploited by a lucrative racket.
What's the most you've heard that anyone has paid to get from Belfast to Dublin?
1,200.
1,200
pounds, not even euro, pounds.
Something that would cost you £20 on a bus.
Yeah.
Newton Mount Kennedy in County Wicklow is the latest place where the tension has reached breaking point. Police deployed the public order unit. 3 squad cars were damaged and 6 people arrested. It's the perfect storm, an acute housing problem in Ireland, immigration at a 16-year high. The Irish government says 80% of asylum seekers here have come from the United Kingdom, sailing into Northern Ireland, then crossing the border to the Republic, part of the EU. And the threat of deportation to Rwanda is partly responsible, according to Ireland's Foreign Minister.
But clearly we've had an increase in the numbers coming UK from Northern Ireland into the Republic. And it's very obvious that the Rwanda policy, if you're a person in a given situation in the UK, well then you don't want to go to Rwanda.
With a population of just 7 million people, but a global diaspora of 70 million, Ireland is an immigrant nation with an immigrant challenge. The government now struggling to cope with an influx of people. Protests are gaining momentum. The community turned out in force for this one last month. The government's finally talking about a new system, an attempt to rein in disquiet.
First ever migrant has been sent from the UK to Rwanda. The individual was believed to be part of the voluntary relocation plan. Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who can tell us more. And John, I mean, this is the moment the government has been waiting for.
Well, up to a point. It's not a deportation as such. It's under a voluntary scheme, this. And the guy's been given £3,000 to settle in Rwanda as part of this voluntary scheme. He went on a commercial flight and was handed £3,000 from taxpayers to help him relocate and it was part of this scheme, as I say, for voluntary deportations. Now, opposition politicians have been pretty scathing about this. For example, Yvette Cooper has said that this shows that the scheme, Yvette Cooper says, the Tories are so desperate to get any flight off to Rwanda before the local elections, they've now just paid someone to go. British taxpayers aren't just forking out £3,000 for a volunteer to board a plane, they're also paying Rwanda to provide him with free board and lodgings for the next 5 years. And Labour saying again what they've said a million times before about this being a pre-election gimmick. She also says that former Tory Home Office ministers, that's Robert Jenrick and others, have warned that this plan was just to get token flights off. Now we know what they mean. And Nigel Farage has also had something to say about this. He says, don't be conned by this new government spin on the Rwanda deal. This African man who did not even cross the channel was refused asylum and has voluntarily accepted £3,000 plus free board. It won't stop the boats. So it's not a deportation flight, on a chartered plane or anything like that. He was put on a commercial flight, paid £3,000 under a voluntary scheme. The government will say, of course, it's a success, and it's the first person who's been sent to Rwanda, but it's not quite as the government would have us believe.
The government just sent a failed asylum seeker to Rwanda and it paid him £3,000 to go. But how much will it really cost? We've been taking a closer look and the true cost to British taxpayers is much, much larger. Now, this isn't the main Rwanda policy that's dominated politics for 2 years. That's about forcing some asylum seekers to East Africa to have their claims processed there. No, this is a voluntary scheme for people still in the UK whose applications have already failed. The government is now offering these people up to £3,000 to move to Rwanda. But the true cost is much, much more, as British taxpayers are also paying Rwanda for every individual they take. That's because people who go to Rwanda by choice can get the same relocation package in Rwanda as those sent by force. So you've got housing, food and healthcare for up to 5 years, costing the UK taxpayer up to £140,000 just about for every single person who chooses to go, we estimate, using figures from the National Audit Office. That's on top of the £370 million the government will pay to set up the forced and the voluntary Rwanda schemes. Well, the Home Office told us the policy allows people to be relocated to what it describes as a safe third country, where they will be supported. It says removal flights to Rwanda will take off in the next 9 to 11 weeks to deter people crossing the channel.
Irish courts are refusing to allow the return of asylum seekers to the UK because they say your Rwanda scheme is a breach of international law. Is that a proof to you that the scheme is working, or is that embarrassing?
Well, I'm very confident that our scheme is compliant with all our international obligations, and I make absolutely no apology for doing everything I can to tackle illegal migration.
Can you get a return scheme with Ireland, do you think?
I'm not interested in that. We're not going to accept returns from the EU via Ireland when the EU doesn't accept returns back to France where illegal migrants are coming from. Of course we're not going to do that. I'm determined to get our Rwanda scheme up and running because I want a deterrent.